Chapter 6. Dink gulped and felt goosebumps climbing his legs. Could it be Emery Scott's ghost? The light winked a few more times, then disappeared. Dink shivered, rubbing his eyes. When the light didn't return, he crawled back into bed. He yawned and closed his eyes, deciding that he had seen a firefly. But just before falling off to sleep, Dink opened his eyes again. He had seen only one light moving out there in the darkness. Why would there be only one firefly in the woods? He thought about that until he fell asleep. Dink dreamed that he was in the cave again. It was pitch dark. Up ahead he heard a hideous scream, but this time the scream didn't stop. It just got louder. Suddenly bats were flying in his face, but these bats had feathers, bright green feathers. Dink bolted upright into his bed. The blankets were twisted around his legs, and the alarm clock was buzzing. I'm not in a cave, Dink realized. I'm still in the castle. Relieved, he shut off the alarm. Josh, wake up, he said. Josh opened an eye. Why? Dink climbed out of bed. Walker's taking us lobstering, remember? He turned on the light and yanked Josh's covers off. Come on, let's go catch a lobster. Josh groaned, but he climbed out of bed. I hate lobsters. Dink laughed. You ate one last night. He pulled on yesterday's jeans and a warm sweatshirt over his t-shirt. I'm going downstairs. Don't go back to bed. Dink crossed the hall and tapped on Ruth Rose's door. She was up and dressed in yellow from top to bottom. Did you see anything strange last night? Dink asked. Ruth Rose was pulling a brush through her hair. She shook her head. Well, I did. I'll tell you about it downstairs. There was a light on in the kitchen. Dink saw juice glasses, cereal bowls, and some muffins on the table. He was munching when Ruth Rose and Josh came in. Guys, I think someone was creeping around outside last night, Dink said. He told them about the light he'd seen in the woods. Josh grabbed a muffin and bit off half. Told you, he said, trying to grin and chew at the same time. It was Emery's ghost. Very funny, Josh, Ruth Rose said. Just then there was a thump in the mudroom and the kitchen door crashed open. Josh nearly fell out of his chair. Walker came in wearing tall rubber boots and a yellow slicker. Ready to go? He asked. Dink laughed in relief. Josh thought you were a ghost, he said. Did not, Josh muttered. They walked outside and climbed into Walker's Jeep. The sky was pitch black. Dink peered into the woods, half expecting to see the strange light again. A few minutes later, Walker turned into his driveway. They got out and walked behind the house to the dock. Their feet made hollow noises on the wooden boards. Watch your step out here, Walker said, aiming a flashlight at Dink's feet. Dink breathed in the salty night air. A few stars made pinpoints of light above the boat. Somewhere he heard a night bird call. Ready to come aboard? Walker asked. Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose followed Walker onto the dark boat. Chapter 7. Better slip on one of those, Walker said when they were aboard. He pointed at orange life jackets hanging on a row of pegs. The kids climbed into the bulky vests and sat on benches. Walker started the motor, and the small boat moved away from the dock. It'll be about an hour before we get to my pops, Walker hollered over the roar of the engine. Get comfortable. Ruth Rose and Josh curled up on the benches, but Dink sat up. He didn't want to miss a thing. He could smell the lobster bait. Waves slapped against the hull as they chugged through the black water. Dink watched the glow of morning color, the horizon pale yellow. It made him remember the light he'd seen last night. Did the light have anything to do with the strange noises or the two green feathers? The boat's gentle rocking made Dink feel sleepy. He closed his eyes. Then Walker was shaking him. Dink sat up and squinted in the sunlight. The waves rocked the boat back and forth when Dink stood up. He nearly lost his balance. Where are we? He asked. About 5 miles out, Walker said. Wake up Ruth Rose and Josh, and we'll eat. They sat in a patch of sunlight. Breakfast was peanut butter sandwiches and hot milky cocoa from Walker's thermos. Dink saw other boats in the distance. Are those all lobster boats? Walker nodded. Most of them are. A few fishing boats are out, too. Josh looked over the side. How do you catch the lobsters? He asked. Walker pointed to a machine. That winch brings them up? I'll show you how it works. Walker picked up a long pole with a hook on one end. He used it to grab the rope attached to a marker buoy. He snagged the rope onto the winch, pushed a button, and wet rope began whistling up at the water fast. A few seconds later, a lobster pot surfaced on the other end of the rope. Wearing a rubber apron and gloves, Walker dragged it into the boat. The wooden trap was covered with seaweed. A few small crabs scampered out onto the deck. Let's see what we've got, Walker said, dropping the crabs back into the sea. Walker opened the pot's small door and reached in a gloved hand. He pulled out a wet, dark green lobster. The lobster waved its claws angrily. The claws can break a finger, Walker warned. He snapped two thick rubber bands onto the lobster's front claws. Then he dropped the lobster into a tank of seawater. Josh, get the bait, will ya? Josh grabbed the heavy pail over Walker pulled out a huge fish head. Oh, phew, Josh said. That's gross. The lobsters don't mind, Walker said, dropping the fish head into the lobster pot. He fastened the door and shoved the trap back into the water. That's pretty much how it's done, Walker said, slapping water off his gloves. Can we pull another one? Dink asked. Sure, and you guys can help. Grab some gloves out of that locker. Ruth Rose brought out 3 pairs of thick rubber gloves. Walker winched up another pot and held a wiggling lobster out to Josh. Hold him by the back so he can't reach you with his claws. Josh held the lobster with both gloved hands. Ruth Rose and Dink snapped rubber bands onto the claws. Who wants to put bait in the pot? Walker asked, grinning. Dink volunteered while Josh faked gagging noises. Dink stuck his hand into the bait bucket, then dropped a bloody fish head into the lobster pot. The morning grew warm, so the kids stripped off their sweatshirts. The ocean was calm. Seagulls soared overhead, watching for scraps. Look, there's Rip, Walker said. Rip pulled his boat up next to Lady Luck. When the boats were side by side, Rip tossed a line to Dink. How's it going? Rip asked. He was wearing clean jeans and a t-shirt. He held a coffee mug in one hand. We got a few, Walker said. My crew here was a big help. Are you going lobstering? Josh asked. Rip shook his head and flashed a grin. Not today, kiddo. Just came out to check my buoys. Toss me the line, okay? Dink tossed the end of the rope toward the other boat. Rip caught it in his free hand. Have a good day, he yelled as he pulled away. Anyone want more cocoa? Walker asked. I do, Josh said. Dink turned around and saw something on Lady Luck's deck. It was a bright green feather.